Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them and how you can build it yourself.
This episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast is brought to you by our sales coaching and consulting services. Are you looking to create repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue? We've helped thousands of companies grow their business with tailored expert advice backed by testing to ensure they establish the best practices that'll work for them. Head over to bit.ly/predictable revenue coaching to learn more. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Predictable Revenue Podcast. We're going to talk about structuring your go-to-market org today. Structuring your go-to-market organization optimally is vital if you want that team to actually achieve the desired outcome. It comes down to timing, how you structure that team, who you pull in, where you find them. There's a lot of pieces that go into it. And if you don't have a really solid plan for how to do this, unfortunately, a lot of companies are going to get it wrong the first time around. I'm your host, Sarah Hicks, and today on the Predictable Revenue Podcast, I'm going to be chatting to an expert about how leading B2B companies are structuring their go-to-market teams. He's an entrepreneur with 18 years of experience in founding and scaling global companies. He's the CEO of Sales Impact Academy, and over the last 7 years, he's grown 2 international technology businesses from 0 to 70 million in combined sales as CRO and hundreds of millions in value. He helps companies like HubSpot, Gong, and Outreach grow revenue and scale through B2B education. And currently, he spends every waking moment on a mission to help millions of people in revenue-related roles be exceptional and find joy in their work as co-founder and CEO of Sales Impact Academy. He leads a talented team, revolutionizing the way that B2B tech companies approach skills development, making it an integral part of their go-to-market stack. And that is why we brought him on this podcast to talk about all of that stuff.
Well, that wasn't
what he's talking about.
Well, that wasn't a mouthful.
It wasn't at all. Paul Fifield, welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
So let's start right at the beginning of this go-to-market team building. What is the very first thing you need to do? Kind of set the scene for us.
Yeah. Okay. I should just say to your listeners, as we just talked about just before, I'm recovering from COVID, so I have a little bit of a tickly cough. So it's not me like weirdly laughing like mid-sentence. So apologies for that. So if everyone could just bear with me, that'd be great. So like I honestly think, this is one of the absolutely most important things to get right. And as you said, in your opening, so many companies get this wrong, and actually the consequences of getting this wrong can be absolutely devastating, right? You can hire the wrong people in the wrong order, burn through serious amounts of capital, literally burn through years of your life, right? Getting things wrong. The number of times that I've heard stories of people, I'm on my 3rd VP of sales in. And when you sort of dig into it, they didn't even know what they were hiring in the first place. They hired a VP of sales way too early, and all of those kind of mistakes. And it's just really sad, right? But like I said, it's not just the capital that you burn through, but it's the time that you lose because you've made all these kind of like wrong decisions. So we're certainly at Sales Impact Academy like building curriculum to help people with this. In fact, we have a great course called Go-to-Market Fundamentals, which touches a lot on this. So I think the team that you build and that it obviously changes through the phases, right? So would it be helpful to start kind of at the kind of beginnings? I think it'd be probably quite a useful
I think so.
place to start. But I think so this is where like a lot of the problems take place in that sort of 0 to million revenue. Once you get post a million, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, you're almost getting to a robust enough situation where you can kind of make a few mistakes. But in this 0 to a million, you're very, very fragile. And it's not lost on anyone the failure rates in go-to-market in that super early phase. You're like a fragile little flower in a harsh desert, and you got to survive, right? So mistake number 1. So you're super early. Typically, if you're a very technology focused company, often there's a technical founder, right? So there's either a developer or a product person who's founded the company, and you might have some co-founders, and you've got like an MVP, and you're trying to get traction. Now one of the biggest mistakes that I see is that these early stage, product people or engineering people typically can be quite kind of introverted. The thought of sales makes them literally just break out into a sweat. How can I possibly do this? And they immediately try and kind of push sales away to someone else, try and hide their way out of the situation. The most important thing for any CEO, whether you're a technical CEO, whether you're a commercial CEO, you have to generate those first customers. Like, fundamentally, you have to do it. Because it's kind of really interesting. Someone said to me a while back, early stage customers buy into the same thing that early stage VCs buy into. They buy into the individual. Right? You haven't really got much of a product. You're so early. You might have an MVP and you might be pretty on to solving a problem, but they're really buying into you, right? And there's no way on God's green earth that you're going to be able to instill the passion that made you quit your job, take all the risks, work 15 hours a day, all the stuff that you do as a founding CEO. You're never going to be able to impart that passion for the problem that you're solving into a salesperson. And often not, you don't even know what kind of a salesperson you even would need at that early stage. And this is where some people get it really wrong, and they try and hire a VP of sales. They haven't got much cash, and they're like, "Oh, just get a VP of sales in because they'll know how to sell this thing. That'll be great, right?" It's absolutely critical. Like, they buy into you and have the confidence you are absolutely the best sales asset in the company. There's hands down. Even if you feel that you're not, and even if you feel you don't have much confidence, like you don't really have confidence in getting out there, it's critical because they will see it in you. They'll see it in your eyes. They'll see it like in your body language. Like, the minute you start talking about the problem that you're solving, the minute you start talking about the product you make, people just come alive and they see that, right? And that's what they kind of buy into. So that's my first big thing. Like, it's the CEO has to do the hard yards, even if they're not, have any experience of sales, so to speak. Now, the first hire that I actually think, I don't know if this is contrarian or not, but I actually think the very first hire that you should make at that early stage is actually an SDR. Okay, because as you well know, Sarah, like the process of building pipeline takes time and it takes focus. It's quite hard to do pipeline building and do something else as well. I mean, that's why that's essentially why the predictable revenue book was even written in the first place. That context shifting is really, really hard as you're generating pipeline. Even harder if you're the CEO as well, and you're selling and you're running a small team and you're building product. Like, it's just impossible almost to build pipeline. And the reason I think, there's another really important reason why I think the SDR is the first hire, which is what you've got to do for those first 10-ish customers, right? It's relatively arbitrary, but let's just use the word 10 because everyone uses the word 10. Actually, no, let's use the word 11. Right? So for your first 11 customers, it's really, really important. I know that Aaron talks about this from Impossible to Inevitable, which by the way, I'm in that book. I have 3.5 pages, which is pretty cool. My mom was very proud. Is that it's so important to get some proxy of product market fit that you're really solving a problem. Is that those early 11 customers you've got from cold. Okay, so another thing that can happen easily is you get warm introductions to these people. You get warm introductions via friends, via family, via maybe a pre-seed or a seed VC, and it lulls you into this false sense of security that, like, hey, this is kind of easy. I'll meet these people, and they buy into like a trial. Fantastic. What the SDR, bringing that SDR in, does for you, it really makes you focus on your ICP, really focus, because that's what you have to do to make them successful. Really focus on your messaging, making sure that you're talking to the pain that you're solving, and you get pipeline from cold. And if you then can close that into trial and you get to the magic 11, you're basically kind of on your way. And let's say, who knows what your ACV is, but your 11 customers gets you to a couple of 100,000. It's at that point, you can now start to be thinking about hiring maybe a couple of AEs. So that's the very, I'd say.
Yeah, I have a question about this SDR. So specifically, if we're talking about one of these technical founders who doesn't have necessarily that sales expertise themselves, how can they make sure that they equip that kind of solo SDR with everything they need to be successful for those first 11 customers?
I won't say get a subscription to Sales Impact Academy, because that would be massively, massively self-serving. But yeah, look, I'm not saying it's easy. Like, none of this is like, starting a company and growing a company is not easy. There's probably a lot of resources out there on the internet to help you to understand how you manage a BDR. There's plenty of like networking groups you can go to. There's consultants up the wazoo these days who've been SDR leaders, who you could perhaps get in for a day a week. And that's probably the route I would take if I was in that position, just to, because you haven't got the skills to help to train an SDR, right, and build them up. I'd probably say, if you were to like shock horror and not get a subscription to Sales Impact Academy, I'd say like get maybe a consultant in for like half a day a week. Plenty of ways of finding groups where you can find those consultants, and they'll help you to get an SDR up and running.
Got it.
And even probably hire them in the first place, to be honest with you, because that's probably a little bit scary for someone that's not done it before.
Cool.
So anyway, I know I've labored that a little bit, but it's so critical. And hopefully I've saved X number of companies from making the dramatic mistake of hiring people too soon in sales. Your next phase, so kind of assuming here that you've got some capital, right? You've done a pre-seed round, you've got some money, obviously you're building your tech team as well. Once you've got maybe to that couple of 100,000 in sort of ARR, you've got your 11, maybe 15, roughly speaking, there's traction, you've got them from cold. It's like, I think we can repeat this now. We've got to 11, we can get to 100. So the structure of the team next, and this is another classic mistake, I've made this mistake as well, is not starting to build a marketing engine early enough. So many people default, and I've done it, like I said, I've done this. You build your SDR function first, you get another SDR, and you focus on that, and you get your AEs, and you've just got an SDR AE motion, and then after a while, you're like, I want some inbound now. But actually, it takes time, right? It takes 6-9 months to go from standing start to build predictability from an inbound engine. So if you've got the cash, get a paper and pen. This is literally the team that I think you then build next, right? And bearing in mind, you're still doing this essentially as the CEO. So two AEs, not one. Always good to have like two. Again, if you can afford it. Quite hard to know what good looks like if it's just one. I get another SDR, so you've got a 1-to-1 ratio of SDRs to AEs. Buddy them up if you want, or round robin. It doesn't really matter. I have a marketing exec, a content manager, who's starting to do content for you, and you've got a multi-skilled marketing exec. I'd have a RevOps person pretty damn quick, like straight away. And again, you can get a RevOps person on like a day a week. We did it at the beginning of Sales Impact Academy. In fact, we got to about 3 million in ARR with a 2-day-a-week RevOps person, and then things start to break. But again, think creatively about just getting the resource in. If you get RevOps in at that stage, you won't get into a mess. And then the final really, really important one is a customer success rep. It's in this stage, it is all about product market fit and customer success. Yeah, you want to you want to be bringing on customers and learning from them, but this is all about making sure that those customers that have bought into your product, either on a trial or actually bought into an annual subscription, are getting value. If you cycle around a year and they all drop out, you're going to find it very hard to raise your next fund, your next funding round, and it could be curtains, right? Could be over. So that's the team. And that, I think, is a strong team. You've got good acquisition, you're building marketing muscle, you've got RevOps to keep everything organized, and you've got a customer success rep to really be focused on success. Don't think for a second at this stage about cross-sell, upsell, or any of that nonsense. Just think success. That's it. And that team should propel you to $1 million plus in revenue in X period of time.
Mhm.
So that's that phase.
Right. And how do you know when you've made it to the next phase? How do you know when it is time to start bringing in these more senior people?
I missed one small important point. Sorry, if I just go back, and I'll come back to this question here. When those early AEs join the company, and again, you can get some fractional help with this as well. I know of a great service called ScaleWise, run by a really good friend of mine in the US and the UK. They've got a whole network of people that can help you with this kind of stuff. Get some people in like that, maybe a day a week, get some experts around you to help you build out this kind of stuff. In those early days, once you've got your 11th customer and you've got your AEs in, your 12th customer to probably your 30th or 40th customer, you're very much still selling as a CEO, right? Those AEs, what they do immediately is give you leverage. They're in deals with you, they do follow up, they manage the CRM, they kind of they carry the bag for you. You're doing the discovery call, you're doing the demo, and you're getting it basically through to close, but they're just giving you leverage. Because there's a lot for them to learn, right? And you haven't got enablement, and it's got to all come from you, right? As the CEO. So you learn through doing, right? So they join you on all these deals, and they give you superpowers. And then over time, they can then start running their own sales cycles, and that's how you ramp them. But I literally closed the deal today. It's coming in the next hour or two. I've pretty much left sales now, but there's a particularly we were kind of semi-bootstrapped. We hadn't really raised much money. If you are bootstrapped, you're going to be staying very close to sales, and because that's going to be your source of income. If you got a bit of capital, you can maybe step back from sales a little bit as a CEO, particularly if you're a technical CEO. But like I say, I think the benchmark, going back to your question, Sarah, is probably around, again, it's about $1 million in ARR. That's really when you can start to trigger the Series A. And it's at this point where you can now start to get your VP of sales, right? You've now got maybe, 40, 50 customers, whatever it might be. There's some repeatability. You've got some metrics. Your RevOps person's given you visibility on number of kind of meetings booked, meetings attended, SQOs, conversion rates as customers. You've got some, you're heading to predictability perhaps, or you can smell it, right? And things are going well. Customers are not churning out. You're like, okay, cool. We've got to $1 million. We can probably go out and raise our A, 5 million, whatever it might be. That's when you get your VP of sales, and that's when you get your VP of marketing, and that's when you can really start to step back and let them now start to sort of run the show.
Got it. Okay, very interesting. And are there any other, at this slightly later stage, you're starting to get those senior leaders of these functions that you've been building out, kind of from the practitioner up? You've really built, you want people on the ground first. What are these, what are the new roles that you might be introducing at this later stage?
Right. So now the next roles are this. So you're too early for a CRO, right? People again thinking, oh, I got to $1 million, I need a CRO. I don't think that's right. I think you get a very, very in the weeds, functional, VP of sales, and I'll really qualify this. Don't give them a quota. Yes, get them to do some early deals. I think absolutely they need to go through the rhythm of it. They'll be refining your sales cycle, because the one you've created, the stages and your inputs and output criteria for the stages, is probably a bit of a mess. They're going to come in and they're going to sort of professionalize that. They're going to professionalize your presentations. They're going to really, those stages are really, really important. They're going to start getting better at upskilling the team, better demo, better discoveries, all that kind of good stuff, refining the ICP. But their big thing is building the team, right? And as well as getting performance out of the existing team, and so many people saddle them with a quota, and it's just a ridiculous thing to do. So definitely don't do that. So, but you want someone just focused on new business. Probably your next senior role is going to be senior hire, and this either could be someone that's coming up through the ranks potentially, or you've hired, is head of CS or a VP of CS. Again, you're still early stage, and that customer success is critical. And the other interesting role that you may well have, if you've got an interesting partner or channel kind of like execution, idea, offering, whatever it might be, is actually having a head of partnerships as well. So you can have, so then it starts to look like, you want to move them out to full-time RevOps. So you'd have RevOps, which could also be called BizOps if you want that person to be a bit broader. But RevOps, VP of sales, VP of marketing, a VP of CS, and VP of partnerships. That's what you're, as you're going from 1 to 5 million, those kinds of roles start to appear basically.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of, you mentioned that you don't want to shoulder them with too much of the kind of quota carrying type responsibility if you're talking about the VP sales side. Let's walk through each of those roles. We don't have to dive too deep, but help me understand who is the best fit. What is the best type of person to be the first leader for each of these teams?
I think one of the most important things there's a couple of really important things I think across the team, right? Is what's your average selling price? What, like, are you selling $50,000 deals? Are you doing $500,000 deals? Like, are you enterprise? Are you mid-market? And I think also you look at stage, right? Have they done the Series A to Series C? Have they done the 2 million to 10 million stage? Because that's the stage you're kind of like now in. So it's just too risky to go and grab a person who's just stepped out of a 50 million to 100 stage or 100 million to 500 million stage and bring them right back to like Series A and 2 million in revenue. It's just too risky. It might well work. The other thing I'd also say when hiring now this senior team, I would always, and I think I've made this, in fact I have made this mistake, you get sucked into like the Googles, the Microsofts, the Amazons, the Snowflake, whatever it is, right? Whatever gigantic SaaS or tech company. Google's obviously another big one, like, and you're like, oh wow, she's from Google. She's got to be good. She's got to be like, and you get sucked in. I tell you why I would never hire from those companies in a million trillion years, is that you are working in a startup that nobody gives a shit about. Sorry, I swear. Nobody cares about.
No, that's fine.
Nobody like knows. You're literally like an annoyance. You've got zero brand, zilch. You have nothing. Now, I can tell you it's very different selling when it's like, hey, it's Paul here from Google, to when it's, hey, it's Paul here from Sales and Bat Academy. It's like, or, company X. Very, very different. And I think those people, you forget how powerful it is to have that brand behind you.
Yeah.
So I always look for people who have done that journey, and people have done that journey for companies that I've never actually even kind of heard of. And even better, if they've come from a really, really competitive environment as well. They're going to have street smarts. They're just going to be ready, and and they know what happens in that sort of 2 to 10 journey. There's a whole bunch of great stuff on like SaaStr. Jason Lemkin puts loads of great stuff out about like 10 great questions for VPs of marketing, 10 great questions for VPs of sales. I'd go head over there. I just want to go back to like the structure of the team, because now you're starting to scale. And now certain other metrics become really, really important, right? So retention metrics are always pretty important. And I mentioned early on, sub $1 million. NDR, I mean, yeah, it's probably interesting, but it's still a bit early. Just don't lose them. Once you're in that 1 or 2 to 10, holy crap, NDR is literally everything, right? You need that to be over 100%. If you can get that up to 140%, then oh my God, you're in the top decile. That's going to be one of the most incredible things that investors will give you a massive multiple premium if you can get that NDR. Okay, great. Well, how do you get NDR? Well, you get NDR by growing the revenue from your existing customer base. So let's park pricing, because that opens up a whole pricing discussion now of like, have you got a scalable pricing model? I'd suggest get one. Thankfully, and I literally count my lucky stars pretty much every day for this, we have a seat model that absolutely works at Sales and Bat Academy. It's just the most well-known, easy, simple way to like scale revenue. And I mentioned a large company that we've just signed that's just expanded from 50 to 200 seats, which is amazing. Now, NDR, I'm not going to go into what NDR is. I'm hoping that every one of your listeners knows. If you don't, shame on you if you're in a SaaS company. But obviously what you're looking to do is grow, is basically cross-sell and upsell. Now, here's the next big thing. You start to see mistakes happening at kind of like bigger scale. I see this all the time. I was talking about it, I think, to someone earlier on today. It's when people don't understand the difference between customer success reps and account management. Now, I'm from the school of thought. Now, there's a couple of ways you can model this, right? You can win a bunch of customers. They are looked after by customer success. If they find cross-sell and upsell opportunities, they throw that back to the AE who's got that customer in their territory, and the AE does the cross-sell upsell. Mm-hmm. My personal view on that is I don't think that's the optimum model, because it's a different motion again. Yes, it's a piece of new business, but it's a piece of new business from an existing customer. I want, and it messes up your AE metrics, right, a little bit, right? I want my AEs focused on just new. I want you in that new motion. That's all I want you to do. Oscillate, with your SDR, new. I want you to be in the rhythm. Just thinking about perfecting discovery, like being an expert in running the sales cycle from a cold call, from a cold discovery, bang through to close. Mm-hmm. I just want you flexing that single muscle over and over and over and over again, and doing really well as a result. Personally, I think one of the most amazing roles in a scaling SaaS company is the account management function. Now, the account management function can actually sit under the VP of sales, or as you get bigger, the CRO. Mm-hmm. But you definitely want your customer success team to be very separate. Now, Dan Steinman, who wrote the book on customer success called Customer Success. He's the chief evangelist over at Gainsight. He's a huge, he's a huge believer in having a CRO and a chief customer officer, and they're very separate roles. And what he talks about, is this kind of healthy friction. Okay, and also, speaking as a CEO, I'm nothing if my customers aren't successful. I don't want the reporting line to my customers to be one away from me, right? I don't want to be going to my CRO to say, oh, do you mind if I go and chat to Sarah, who's head of CS, who reports to you, to do skipper level, to go and chat to her about how our customers are doing. I want to be close to my customers. So I want my chief customer officer to reporting into me as CEO. So that's one point. But there's some other really interesting subtle points, right? Let's say a sales team's losing discipline around ICP, and they're throwing in shit accounts, and it's hitting the CS team, and they're like, what are we going to do with this? How are we going to get that? How are we going to get usage and value and time to value? It's completely the wrong customer. They've just sold them a complete load of bullshit. Not only that, and that's one potential problem. Another potential problem could be they've just set the wrong expectations. There's a 60-day implementation here. It doesn't take 2 weeks. There's some idiot over in sales that said it's 2 weeks. I've just told them it's 2 months, and they've gone absolutely mad at me. That, what the hell? Now, picture this. If your CS lead is reporting into the CRO and says, hey, there's some problems with ICP, they're going to go, yeah, just kind of maybe fix it, possibly. There's less authority if the person you're raising the problem with is the person you report into. If it's the CCO and then you both report into the CEO, you go to that person's office and you sit down and you say, hey, let's say you're the CRO, Sarah, we need to have a good chat. We're in a psychologically safe environment. We're not going to get angry, but look, there's a real problem. And actually I need to sit down and walk you through it. And you're going to be taken seriously as a peer, and you'll fix the problem, right? So anyway, there's a sort of a hint as to where the structures then go as you continue to sort of scale. But this account management function is critical. The rhythm of expansion and finding opportunities in clients, and looking at your customer base and doing the analysis and segmenting the customer base into high probability growth accounts, mid-level, ignore, all of that thought process, all that motion, finding those opportunities, looking at the cross sales, looking at the upsells, working closely with CS, ensuring there's a really good feedback loop from CS to account managers as they unearth, incentivize CS with things like CSL, so customer success leads, incentivize them, put them on like $100 a CSL every single month. Go find 10 from your book of business of 50 customers, 30 customers, and they'll be thinking about it, but they don't do it. They just find the opportunities, shove it back, and they're on like a really good incentive plan. And your AMs then to go and do the business. And you could actually, in some companies, they even do the renewal. CS doesn't even do the renewal. To be debated. Kind of doesn't really matter too much. I think Dan Steinman actually is a big fan of actually the renewal even happens with the AM as well. But now picture your factory line, because actually it's now pretty goddamn epic. So you've got your top of funnel, which has been now being driven by a really nice mature marketing function that you seeded way back when. That's fantastic, and you've got that working, and your TOFI metrics are great, and you know how many MQLs you need, the conversions to SQL. You've got your partnership function, who's driving like really good like inbound leads that are turning it as well into SQOs. That's fantastic, and you've got your SDRs that are now building up as well, and that all filters into your AEs. Your AEs is taking those SQOs, and also I'd also always have AEs doing some self-sourcing of SQOs. Push all that through to conversion. The next critical role, which we haven't even touched on, which is why it's quite nice to map it out like this in terms of like a customer journey, is onboarding. Like separate onboarding from customer success. Even if your product is quite simple, like that phase of onboarding is one of the most important like determinants of will that customer churn in 12 months. Now that onboarding, like get that time to value as quick as possible, get them super pumped and super happy and getting value, right? There's this great phrase, happy customers will churn, successful customers won't, right? So get deep into like what is going to make this customer like successful, what are the ROIs, set it up really well. Again, if you just leave that to the CS team, every single onboarding is going to be different. There's no standardization. Blah. And it's just a mess. So onboarding. So SDR and all the other tofu stuff, AEs, then you have your onboarding person team that moves to CS, and then you have your AMs kind of right at the end of that right-hand side of the factory line, working with your CS team to drive that cross-sell and upsell. And you have separate leadership at the top. And sometimes partnerships can go into marketing as you maybe hit 10 million, and you're looking maybe at now a C-suite. The CRO can probably take marketing, can probably take account management, and the SDRs and the AEs.
Cool. You mentioned you'd still have the account executive self-sourcing throughout these stages. What do you think the ratio is, or how much time should they be spending self-sourcing versus inbound, outbound leads?
I guess probably it would maybe differ a little bit whether you're going mid-market or enterprise, but rough rule of thumb, maybe like 15-20% of like SQOs they need they come from them.
Right.
But generally it's accepted that's kind of best practice to keep that muscle going.
Yeah, makes sense. So they don't get kind of complacent, and when there's a bit of a slower month, they still have the skills to build up that pipeline. Cool.
You're for AEs, you're the CEO of your own business, right? And you have to de-risk your business sometimes, and you de-risk it by self-sourcing, and it just keeps you sharp. I mean, I'm still sourcing for the company all the time. I'm the CEO, so.
Cool. And what do you think, what stage does this makeup take us to? At what point do you need to introduce the C-suite?
I mean, again, it kind of, it will differ by company, but as a rough rule of thumb, I think that, and again, I'm not going to be self-serving here, but we have some great curriculum to help people become CROs. I'm a firm believer in, as you'd imagine, like if we just educate people and we teach them how to do this stuff, we can elevate people, right? They just need to be taught. They just need to have good education, and they will grow, and they can achieve. They can take on these bigger roles. They just need to know how. So, I always like to hope that suite of VPs that you've got they're the ones that move up. I know that, I know that Zoom. I know the Zoom business pretty well. I know there's CRO, their former CRO. He's an amazing guy. He actually teaches at Sales Impact Academy as well. Telling me it's amazing stories about how that's what they did at Zoom. They just, they lifted people up. I think that the other huge mistake that happens once you get to maybe 10 million is this. It's like, right, now it's time to bring in the grown-ups.
Right.
Often
Bring in the heavy hitters.
Often, middle-aged, graying men.
Yeah.
It is. Seen it play out a lot. And who've done this before. And they come in and they've completely screwed the culture. And the VP of sales has just been let go for nothing other than just he hasn't done the 10 to 100. Everyone's like, we went to war with this guy or girl. We were like, we had the culture. She had our backs. She looked after us. She cared about us. She got us to 10 million. You've just let her go to bring in this old dickhead. and actually, it really often doesn't work because of that. There's a resentment. The culture gets screwed, and bang. So I want to. I'm much more kind of the school of thinking of like, really support and lift people up, and help them to develop in the company. But yeah, C-suite, you're looking at probably 10 million, roughly 10 million plus. That's when you need to kind of go up a level. But I will say, the transition from a director VP and then up to C-suite, it's a big step. So many things start to change, and you have to, at that point, right? Like, you have to be brilliant and confident enough to hire like people that are better than you in specific areas. Like, the only way you become a great C-level person is you hire VPs really well that could give you a run for your money, right? That's how you do it, because you no longer can do day-to-day stuff. You just can't, because you spend in any given quarter, you'll be away for a quarterly offsite for a week. There'll be preparation for another week. So your RevOps person's going to be like, it's the QBR or whatever it is, or the offsite. You're going to be in management meetings up the wazoo. You're going to be in strategy meetings. You're disconnected from day to day. So you have to have a brilliant team around you that is doing that kind of execution. And it's tough, because that transition, as you do it, you get stressed. You're like, I'm running out of time. I'm in management meetings all the time. It's strategy. The CEO's asking me to do this and that and the other. And I'm just like, I can't run the team, and I can't do all my one-to-ones. Blah, blah, blah. That's when you're not scaling, basically. Right. The person that can scale to C-suite, someone that can see it come in and quickly start hiring his or her like senior team.
Makes sense. And do you think the things that the C-level person hangs on to are just the things that they alone can do, or do you identify kind of your unique skill set and you're like, all right, that's what I'll hang on to, and I need to hire to fill in all of these other gaps?
No, you need to hire for the whole lot. Everything that you were doing before, you need to hire for most of it. You'll need to hire a VP of sales. You'll need to, you'll need to hire for all of it. Yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well,
it might not be that you necessarily, the VP sales gets moved on, but sometimes it's quite hard for a C-level person to come in above that person. Obviously it works. Obviously it works. It's just that's a difficult but necessary journey that the CEO is probably going to have to take. That's why it's so important to create a very high trust organization, because you're going to be upsetting people on that journey and hoping they don't go, and moving them around and changing their scope of responsibility, and it's just pretty messy. So if you've built a truly psychologically safe, true high trust environment with real purpose, and you've treated people well, you can do it. If you've been a dick, good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said, without following a good kind of go-to-market strategy, having your foundational pieces in place before you move on, before you move on. If you don't have that kind of strategy, not only are you going to be changing the scope of work, you're going to do it once, twice, 4 times, 5 times, new manager, new people, and that's certainly not going to work. So while yes, if you're scaling a startup, it's always going to be messy. People are going to wear many hats and things are going to move around. But at least if you've got this, the order of things ironed out the way that you've shown us how to do, at least you mitigate a lot of that. And you kind of hope that each step that you're taking is a step forward rather than a sideways, a backwards, a upside down, which is how it happens for a lot of companies.
I would say one thing, and I think it's probably a really important thing I should have opened up with at the beginning, is what I've just described there is a sales-led go-to-market motion, right? That's not the only go-to-market motion that exists in obviously. You can have a very marketing-driven go-to-market motion, and all the leads are coming in, and you don't do any outbound, right? That's another motion, and that will be an inside sales kind of like setup, where you don't perhaps need SDRs, or you have inbound qualifiers, but you're not doing too much on the outbound. And then the other one, this is really important just to highlight, is product-led growth. Now, it's really, again, when you're designing your go-to-market, like I say, I've just walked you through the most common, right? It is most common to go into a B2B company and see exactly the team that I've outlined, or some version of it. That's the most, I guess the most common is that sales-led motion. But PLG, it's been around for a long time. It's now being called PLG. There's a lot of companies that have built massive businesses like Zoom, where you bring people into the product, they try it for free. You kind of like, they're on a journey and you convert them. That's a different go-to-market motion, and you would need a different team.
Sure.
And there are, and you can have all three motions, right? You can have vast inbound closed with an inbound team. You can have a PLG motion, and typically there you wouldn't have salespeople pouncing on people. You'd have more, people, more producty people, more, sort of account management-y people, sort of going, hey, how you doing? You're getting value from X, Y, and Z product, to try and convert them into into paying customers. And you could then have your B2B motion as well. In fact, we're going to have all three at Sales Impact Academy, no question. But nice. the other important thing to point out about PLG, product motion, in like really think through which motion is going to be right for your product. Price is really important, but getting PLG right, and it's powerful when you do. It has big implications on how you build the product as well. So like your go-to-market just doesn't just change who you hire and how and when. It actually changes how you even approach your product as well. So really think through at the earliest possible stage. Again, get some experts in if you need it right at the early stage, to really think through what is the optimum go-to-market here. Don't just fall into a sales-led motion because that's what everyone else does.
Because you listen to this podcast
and didn't get to the end.
Exactly. And we're like, oh my gosh, how do I start? Turn it off.
Did you listen to the last 3 minutes?
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap it up, Paul. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. It was great to hear. Taking us through every single step of that sales-led, specifically go-to-market function. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about Sales Impact Academy and how people can find it, sign up, be a part of it.
Yeah, sure. So what we're building, the backdrop to what we're building is that in probably the most shocking, educational travesty of the last 50 years, sales wasn't taught at school. It's a major profession. Compounding that problem, it's got very complex. It's now absolutely as complex as a career in medicine. I mean, just what I've talked about today, like putting that infrastructure in place it's highly complex, data driven, like it's crazy, and we're all working out as we go along. It's absolutely mad. And now the world's gone crazy, and like hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars, and it keeps pouring in, and records are set left, right, and center, and there's massive demand for this go-to-market talent pool. That's just, it's in a bit of a mess. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build a scalable, it's a live learning platform for go-to-market teams. We've got 50 plus amazing experts, some of the biggest names in the industry that teach live instruction through the platform. We teach a couple of hours a week per course. We've got amazing curriculum for BDRs, for AEs, for CS reps, for leadership. We're going to be building out a RevOps school as well. We have customers like Gong and Outreach and Klaviyo. And we already have 200 customers, in fact, 6,000 learners, and it's growing like absolutely crazy. We're backed by Stage 2 Capital. Mark Roberge is on our board. Salesimpact.io is the URL. If you want to get the best education in the world on all roles within go-to-market, then we'd love to hear from you.
Nice. Amazing. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes and in the blog so that you guys can find your way over there. Thanks again, Paul, for joining us. Really, really lovely to have you. Lovely to get to chat our way through that very vital topic in kind of scaling businesses. And so many of the people that are listening here are trying to do exactly that. So thanks again. And thank you to all of you guys for joining us on another episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast. We'll catch you next time.